I worked while my wife was supposedly studying in college. I paid for her housing, bills, gave her the best life. And then I accidentally found out that all this time she was married to another man and was using me as an ATM. She thought she would deceive me, but I made her destroy her own life. I believed Caroline and I would be together forever when we got married. She was everything I'd ever wanted, beautiful, smart, and seemingly devoted to building a life with me. We'd met during my final year of business school, where I was finishing my MBA while working part-time at a local finance firm in Chicago. Caroline was waitressing at the cafe near campus, saving money for her own education. I've always wanted to get my degree in psychology, she told me on our third date, her blue eyes shining with ambition. But my parents couldn't afford to send me to college. I fell hard and fast. Within 6 months, I had proposed, and she had accepted. We married in a small ceremony at her parents' church in Springfield, Illinois, surrounded by a few friends and family members. My parents had been skeptical, they thought we were rushing things, but I was convinced Caroline was my soulmate. When a prestigious psychology program accepted her at Northwestern University in Evanston, just north of Chicago, I couldn't have been prouder. We discussed our options and decided that I would stay in our apartment in downtown Chicago, where I had just landed a well-paying job at an investment firm, while she would rent a small place near campus. The commute would have been too much with her demanding schedule, we reasoned. It'll only be for a few years, Caroline had said, kissing me goodbye as she loaded the last of her boxes into her car. Then I'll have my degree, and we can start our family. I threw myself into work while Caroline began her studies. At first, we saw each other every weekend. I'd drive up to Evanston on Friday evenings, or she'd come home to our apartment. But gradually, her visits became less frequent. She always had reasonable excuses: study groups, research projects, part-time work at the university's psychology lab. I believed her without question. Why wouldn't I? She was my wife, and I trusted her completely. "I'm sorry, Michael," she'd say during our video calls, looking tired but determined. "This semester is just killing me. Professor Williams has us doing extra research, and if I want to get into the advanced program next year, I need to maintain a 4.0 GPA. I did everything I could to support her. I paid for her apartment, a nice one-bedroom place that cost more than we had initially budgeted for, but she had convinced me it was in a safer neighborhood. I covered her tuition, her car payments, her insurance, her credit card bills. I even sent her extra money whenever she mentioned needing new textbooks or materials for school. "You're the best husband a girl could ask for," she would tell me, her voice sweet with gratitude. "I'm going to make it all worth it once I graduate, I promise." Our time together had dwindled to once a month, sometimes less. But whenever we did see each other, things were wonderful. Caroline would shower me with affection, cook my favorite meals, and make love to me with a passion that left me breathless. It was enough to sustain me through the long weeks without her. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a regular Tuesday afternoon in April, almost 2 years into her program. I was at my desk, finishing some paperwork, when I received a notification from our joint bank account. Caroline had requested a transfer of $2,500, a larger sum than usual. When I opened the banking app to approve it, I noticed something odd. The destination account had changed. It wasn't her usual checking account but a new one I didn't recognize. I approved the transfer but made a note to ask her about it later. That evening, when we spoke on the phone, I casually mentioned it. "Oh, I had to open a new account," she said smoothly. "There was some issue with fraud alerts on my old one. The bank recommended starting fresh." It seemed reasonable enough, but something in her tone made me uneasy. After we hung up, I logged back into our bank account and looked more closely at the transfer details. The new account was listed under a joint name, Caroline Miller and Eric Miller. Miller. That wasn't Caroline's last name. She was Caroline Turner, taking my surname when we married. Who was Eric Miller? A cold feeling settled in my stomach. I tried to dismiss it as paranoia, but I couldn't shake the sense that something was very wrong. The next day, I called the bank directly, claiming I needed to verify the account for future transfers. The customer service representative confirmed that the account belonged to Eric and Caroline Miller. "Would you like me to connect you with our fraud department, sir?" the representative asked, clearly noting my extended silence. "No," I managed to say. "No, thank you. I just needed to confirm." I hung up and sat motionless at my desk, my mind racing. There had to be an explanation. Maybe it was a clerical error. Maybe Caroline was helping a friend or classmate with financial troubles. Maybe. But I knew better. Deep down, I knew. I decided to do some investigating. Caroline rarely posted on social media. She claimed she was too busy with school, so her Facebook and Instagram accounts offered little information. They showed occasional photos of campus, study materials, and selfies in her apartment, the apartment I was paying for. Nothing suspicious, but nothing revealing either. Next, I searched for Eric Miller. There were dozens of them in the Chicago area alone. I narrowed my search to Evanston and found a profile that made my blood freeze. He was around my age, good-looking, with dark hair and a confident smile. His profile was public, and I scrolled through it with increasing dread. And there it was, posted 11 months ago, a photo of Eric and Caroline standing together on a beach at sunset, arms wrapped around each other, beaming at the camera. The caption read, "Celebrating our first anniversary with my beautiful wife. I love you more each day, Caroline Miller." First anniversary. 11 months ago. Which meant they had been married for almost 2 years, almost exactly as long as Caroline had been in Evanston. Almost exactly as long as she'd been my wife, too. I felt physically ill, my hands shaking as I continued scrolling through Eric's profile. There were dozens of photos of them together, at restaurants, at parties, on weekend trips. In each one, Caroline looked radiant, happier than I'd seen her in a long time. In one particularly painful image, they stood in front of a small house, Eric holding a set of keys, the caption reading, "We did it. First-time homeowners. Thanks to my amazing wife for making this possible." The house they had bought together. Using my money. I closed my laptop and walked to the liquor cabinet, pouring myself a generous glass of whiskey. I drank it in one burning gulp, then poured another. My mind was a chaotic mess of emotions, betrayal, rage, humiliation, despair. How could she do this? How long had she been planning it? Was anything she had ever told me true? That night, I didn't call Caroline as I usually did. I needed time to think, to process, to decide what to do next. She texted around our normal call time. "Hey babe, can't talk tonight. Cramming for a massive exam tomorrow. Love you." I stared at the message, wondering where she really was, what she was really doing. With him, obviously. In their house. The house I had unknowingly paid for. I replied with a simple, "Good luck," then turned off my phone. Over the next few days, I went through the motions of my life like a zombie, showing up at work, responding to emails, attending meetings. But inside, I was calculating, planning. I wasn't going to confront Caroline immediately. I wasn't going to give her the chance to spin more lies or manipulate me further. No, I wanted justice. I wanted her to face consequences for what she had done. I began gathering evidence. I compiled all the bank statements showing transfers to her accounts. I collected receipts for her tuition payments, rent, car insurance, credit card bills, everything I had paid for over the past 2 years. It amounted to well over $100,000. Then I did more digging into Eric Miller. He wasn't hard to find. He worked as a physical therapist at a rehabilitation center in Evanston, or at least he had until about a year ago. From what I could piece together through his LinkedIn profile and social media posts, he had been between jobs for most of the past year, occasionally picking up contract work but nothing steady. So that was their arrangement. Caroline had married me for financial support, then immediately married Eric, presumably her real love, and had been using my money to support both of them, fund their lifestyle, and even buy their house. The more I uncovered, the calmer I became. My initial shock and rage hardened into cold, calculated determination. Caroline had destroyed our marriage and made a fool of me. Now I would return the favor. My first move was subtle. I reduced the amount in our joint account to the minimum required to keep it open. When Caroline inevitably texted asking about it, I replied that there had been some temporary issues with a major client payment, and I'd replenish the account in a week or two. She accepted this without question, her greed making her careless. Meanwhile, I continued my research. Northwestern University had a strict code of conduct for its students, with specific provisions against fraud and misrepresentation. I also discovered that Caroline's psychology program had a particularly stringent ethics requirement. After all, they were training future mental health professionals. I created an anonymous email account and carefully composed a message to the dean of students and the head of the psychology department. I explained the situation in clinical detail, attaching bank statements, marriage certificates. I had obtained a copy of her marriage license to Eric through a public records request, and screenshots from social media clearly showing Caroline's double life. I emphasized that she had committed fraud by misrepresenting her marital status on official university documents and had used her student status to systematically defraud another person. Before sending it, I hesitated briefly. This would destroy her academic career. But then I remembered how coldly, how calculatingly she had used me, lied to me, stolen from me. She had made her choices. Now she would face the consequences. I clicked send. Next, I turned my attention to Eric. Did he know about me? Was he complicit in Caroline's scheme, or was he another victim? Either way, he deserved to know the truth. I created another email account, this one not anonymous. I introduced myself as Michael Turner, Caroline's husband. I explained when and where we had married, attached our marriage certificate and photographs from our wedding. I detailed how I had been supporting Caroline financially throughout her time at Northwestern, believing I was investing in our future together. And I asked, as respectfully as possible, if he had been aware of any of this. I didn't have to wait long for a response. Within hours, Eric replied. Is this some kind of sick joke? Caroline and I have been married for almost 2 years. I have no idea who you are or what you're trying to pull, but stay away from my wife. So he didn't know. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I sent a follow-up email with more evidence, bank statements showing my payments for what I now realized was their house mortgage, not her apartment rent as she had claimed, credit card statements showing purchases that aligned with trips they had taken together, tuition receipts with my name as the payer. I'm not trying to hurt you, I wrote. I was deceived, just as you were. I thought you deserved to know the truth. This time, his response didn't come by email. My phone rang late that night, and when I answered, a shaky voice said, "This is Eric Miller. We need to talk." For almost an hour, Eric and I compared notes, filling in the gaps in each other's understanding of Caroline's elaborate deception. He had met her at a coffee shop near Northwestern 3 years ago, around the same time she and I were dating. They had dated secretly while she continued seeing me, then married shortly after she moved to Evanston, just 3 months after our own wedding. She told me her parents were paying for her education, Eric said, his voice hollow. She said the extra money came from a trust fund her grandparents had set up. And the house? I asked. She said she had saved up for the down payment by working through her undergraduate years, he replied. I believed her. God, I'm such an idiot. We both were, I said. By the end of our conversation, Eric was as angry as I was. We agreed to confront Caroline together, in person, that weekend. But before that could happen, my anonymous tip to Northwestern bore fruit. Caroline called me on Thursday evening, her voice frantic. "Michael, something terrible has happened," she sobbed. "The university called me in for a disciplinary hearing. They're saying someone reported me for ethics violations and fraud. They've suspended me from the program pending an investigation. Michael, I could get expelled. I could lose everything." I feigned concern and sympathy, playing the supportive husband while she continued to lie to my face. "What kind of fraud are they accusing you of?" I asked innocently. "I don't know. Something about misrepresentation on my application. It doesn't make any sense." "I'm sure it's a misunderstanding," I said soothingly. "When is the hearing?" "Monday morning." "I'm so scared, Michael. If I get expelled, all the money you've spent on my education will be wasted. All our sacrifices will be for nothing." Our sacrifices. As if she had sacrificed anything. "Don't worry," I told her. "We'll figure this out. Why don't I come up there this weekend? We can go over everything and prepare for the hearing together." "You would do that?" she asked, relief evident in her voice. "Of course. You're my wife. I'll always support you." The irony of my words wasn't lost on me. I texted Eric that night to update him on the situation. We modified our plan. Instead of confronting Caroline together, he would coincidentally run into us when Caroline and I were having dinner at her favorite restaurant on Saturday night. Saturday arrived, and I drove to Evanston with a strange calm. When I reached Caroline's apartment, the apartment I had been paying for, thinking it was where she lived, when in reality she lived with Eric in their house, she flew into my arms, tears streaming down her face. "I've been so worried," she cried. "I don't know what I'd do without your support." I held her and murmured reassurances, all while thinking about the web of lies she had spun. We spent the afternoon going over her university documents, with me pretending to look for any discrepancies that might have triggered the fraud accusation. Of course, I knew exactly what they had found. That evening, we went to dinner at Oceanique, an upscale seafood restaurant that Caroline had always claimed was her special occasion place. I wondered now how many times she had dined there with Eric, perhaps using the credit card I paid for. We were halfway through our appetizers when Eric walked in. He played his part perfectly, stopping by our table with a look of surprise. "Caroline. I thought you were studying at the library tonight." The color drained from Caroline's face. She looked from Eric to me and back again, her mouth opening and closing without sound. "Eric," she finally managed. "What are you doing here?" "I think the better question," I said quietly, "is what are you doing here, Caroline? Or should I call you Mrs. Miller?" Her eyes widened with terror as she realized she was caught. "Michael, I can explain." "Explain what?" Eric cut in, his voice rising. "Explain how you've been married to two men at the same time. Explain how you've been using his money to pay for our house. Our vacations. My unemployment." People at nearby tables were starting to stare. Caroline sank lower in her seat, her face ashen. "Please," she whispered. "Not here." "Why not here?" I asked, maintaining my calm. "You didn't seem concerned about appropriate venues and you were promising forever to both of us. When you were cashing my checks and lying to my face." A waiter approached, clearly concerned about the disturbance. "Is everything all right here?" "No," Eric and I said in unison. "We're leaving," I added, placing enough cash on the table to cover our bill and a generous tip. "Sorry for the disruption." Outside in the parking lot, Caroline finally found her voice. "I never meant to hurt either of you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "It just happened, and then I didn't know how to fix it without losing you both." "So instead, you decided to keep lying indefinitely?" Eric demanded. How long was this supposed to go on, Caroline? I don't know, she admitted, her shoulders slumping. I loved you both, in different ways. You didn't love either of us, I said coldly. You loved what we could give you. My money. His. I gestured vaguely at Eric, not wanting to contemplate what she had seen in him that she hadn't found in me. The university knows everything, I continued. So does the bank. I've frozen all our joint accounts and reported the fraud. Eric and I have both filed for annulments, in my case, on grounds of fraud, and in his case, on grounds of bigamy. Which, by the way, is a crime in Illinois. Caroline's face crumpled. You're going to send me to jail? That's not up to us, Eric said. But you should probably get a lawyer. We left her there in the parking lot, a small, broken figure illuminated by the harsh glow of the streetlights. As Eric and I walked to our respective cars, he turned to me. What happens now? I shrugged. We move on. We learn from this. We never let anyone make fools of us again. He nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. About all of it. Me too. The aftermath was swift and merciless. Caroline was expelled from Northwestern. The bank launched a fraud investigation. Both our annulment proceedings moved forward without contest. Caroline didn't even show up for the hearings. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she had moved back to her parents' house in Springfield, her reputation in tatters, her future prospects grim. Sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, I wonder if my revenge was too harsh. If I could have handled things differently. If Caroline deserved a second chance. But then I remember the calculated deception, the years of lies, the cold exploitation of my trust and love. And I know that what happened to Caroline wasn't my revenge, it was simply the natural consequence of her own actions. As for me, I'm slowly rebuilding my life. I've moved to a new apartment, made new friends, even started dating again, cautiously, warily, but with hope. The betrayal left its scars, but it also taught me valuable lessons about trust, about self-respect, about the importance of keeping my eyes open even when my heart wants to believe. Some might say I lost those years with Caroline. I prefer to think I gained something more valuable, wisdom. And freedom from a lie I once mistook for love.